So the lines have diverged on the A series a little bit, but what differentiates the Pixel 9a from last year's impressive but a little bit strange Pixel 8a? Well, in our comparison we're going to get into it, so here's everything you need to know. Before then though, if you want some more Pixel content, then stick around here on the channel. Hitting that subscribe button will help me out hugely, and you get some nice things like content like this later down the line. Cheers. So complaining about the Pixel definitely feels par for the course and something that we try not to do too heavily unless it's warranted. There are some complaints we have with a lot of devices, but it's just because we want those devices to be better. And it's true, the Pixel 8a was and it still is a solid mid-ranger. It suffered a little bit from being so close to that regular Pixel 8. I think that was the biggest problem for me, that it felt a little bit out of place. It was only $100 cheaper at its retail price and missed out on some of the premium things like the camera hardware experience and the hardware itself. It was simultaneously the best A-series phone to date, but also hard to recommend at the same time unless scored at a discount. And that's why we couldn't give it our full, wholehearted seal of approval last year. So when we start to look at this new design with the Pixel 9a, gone are those soft corners and that bubbly design that probably has been a hallmark of the Pixel for the past few years, but you knew that coming into this device this year. The 9a has taken on some of its siblings' main traits, its siblings being the Pixel 9 series, so you get something a little taut, sharpened, and honestly, I would say a little bit less approachable to some people out there. Conversely, the Pixel 8a, I think it looks a little bit out of place now if it sticks around in this lineup, especially with that camera bar and that curvy aesthetic. So we don't often see fully flat Android phones these days. It just seems to be something that is only really available on a select few. So I do think in many ways it's somewhat refreshing to see a phone that, with barely any protrusions or sections that extend out of the chassis massively, it's not extensively clear if this design update enables that improved IP68 rating, but it is a first for the A series and it means it's safer to use this phone practically anywhere there may be water or excess dust in your surroundings. Some interesting changes to the hardware though include the increased dimensions. The Pixel 9a is actually somehow 2 grams lighter despite being bigger than the Pixel 8a, and that's even with that size increase. It also means there's some other changes like the ability to have a 6.3 inch screen, which is a minor but notable improvement over the 6.1 inch 8a panel. It also gains an impressive maximum brightness bump and is, I have to say, a vastly superior experience practically in all lighting conditions because of that. It is a superior display in about every single metric, but the uniform bezels on this newer handset, I have to say, are comically large on the sides there. That's not to say that 8a has a bad screen. In fact, it's one of the best in its price bracket. And that 120Hz Full HD Plus panel still looks great and is tuned super nicely. You won't be unhappy with either of these phones, especially when it comes to the display game. You do also get the same optical in-display scanner for biometrics in tandem with software-based face unlock, so there are no upgrades there, but they are fairly reliable and consistent options for you for biometrics given the limitations there. As for the software, Google's big AI play over the past 12 months means that while the Pixel 8a and the 9a's core experience is, well, it's identical for all intents and purposes, the 2024 mid-ranger, basically the phone from last year, misses out on a few things that might never eventually get backported due to limitations in the chipset. Android 15 and the upcoming Android 16 update will likely be identical in terms of that everyday experience, make no mistake about that, but when the stable update for Android 16 does arrive, it's going to be interesting to see if we get some potential AI features or AI features that the 9a will get over the 8a. At the moment, it's mostly down to applications. You can get third-party alternatives to these though that might mimic the functions. The Gemini application is also adding new options that will still be available across most phones in the lineup because it uses cloud computing power rather than on-device resources. Although there's plenty here, there's 8GB of RAM on board, and the Tensor G3 is still a fairly solid chipset. Both of these phones also come with the same 7-year update plan, although obviously you get that extra year with the 9a, which means substantial long-term software support, whichever one you do want to actually go out and pick up. If you already have the 8a, you're well supported for a long time to come. Gemini Nano XXS, or extra small, is available on the 9a, which might mean some text-based AI functions can be backported as features to develop. It also has access to apps like Pixel Studio and Reimagine for tuning your images, plus some other minor additions, but all of the stuff that the Pixel 9 series has, like Pixel Screenshots, is not available. As noted, it still feels almost identical to use these phones when doing ordinary phone stuff, texting, calling, all that kind of thing that you would do on a normal day-to-day basis, so it's not necessarily a huge loss for many of you out there. So historically, the Pixel A series has really offered solid battery longevity, at least when compared to its bigger brethren, and that rings true with the Pixel 8a last year. However, it can't quite match the potential 9a lifespan. This is in part due to that massive internal cell gain, with almost 600 mAh extra with the 9A. It's about 4,600 on the Pixel 8a and 5,100 on the 9A, so that means you'll get potentially more power every single day. That's not all though, as the Pixel 9a now has 23 watt wired charging. Yes, it's not a massive jump up, but it is a jump up nonetheless, which is, I mean, it's going to make a difference when you want to charge this phone, as it does have that bigger battery. The Pixel 8a is still stuck at 18 watts, which is practically ancient at this point in time. Wireless charging though, that hasn't changed. That remains at 7.5 watts with any supported Qi wireless charger. So yeah, in the battery stakes, the 9A definitely has a little bit of a lead over the 8A. So yeah, if you want something that's going to last a long time, this could be the phone in the entire 9 series period this time around. And it also, at least on paper, initially seems like the Pixel 8a has a better main camera than the Pixel 9a. It has extra megapixels at 64 megapixels versus 48. It also has a lower or slower aperture, but that doesn't necessarily make quite as much of a difference, at least as far as we can tell. There is a noticeable sharpness jump when you start to take photos with these phones, and while highlights and dynamic range are also quite a bit better on the Pixel 9a, thanks to that new sensor, colours are a little cooler on this phone, though overall I think it's a nice improvement to a camera that is often a section that regularly stays quite static on Google's lineup. It's only here that alterations have been made. The 8A and the 9A have identical ultra-wide lenses and selfie cameras to boot. While I will say the core camera experience, once you start getting into that UI, is almost identical, the 9A offers a few extra tricks up its sleeve. These include auto macro focus for objects within or up to a 5cm focal range. There's also Add Me, which is basically just dual exposure controls for enhanced group shots. They might not sell a device, but they're nice value adds for that brand new phone, although they're not deal breakers either way. The reality is that photography and video modes, along with the output, are really, really similar across both of these phones. So whichever one you do have, whichever one you do actually go ahead and pick up, I don't think you're going to be disappointed regardless. So now we've compared these a little bit more directly. I think if you already have the Pixel 8a, you should never consider upgrading to the Pixel 9a. You're going to get more upgrades if you wait a little bit longer. Instead, I think the changes here point to a tonal shift for the A series, at least in the coming years and from now on. No longer is it just a cheaper alternative to the base model, although it still is a cheaper alternative. Some design considerations make the affordable option probably its own thing, and I think that's great for prospective buyers, as you get something that's a little bit more separated and doesn't feel like a little bit of a close run gimmick, mimic, whatever you want to call it. Maybe you're torn on this shift. I think having a line in the sand for the Pixel 9a versus the 9, 9 Pro and 9 Pro XL is a great thing, and something we hope that Google continues to run with future updates and releases to this lineup. The 9A is definitely a much better phone than the 8A, has better internals, better cooling, camera system, plus display. The lifespan jump is probably where you make the most gains, and putting a large battery inside is going to be a big draw for people who want the longest lifespan potential on a Pixel, or we haven't been able to thoroughly put that to the test at this stage. I think if you're coming from an older A series phone, you will be very, very happy with what Google has done this year, and the 9A is a solid buy, especially if you're looking at them online and you see the 8A and the 9A side by side. That said, if the 8A is at a substantial discount, I think talk half the price, maybe under $300, might be somewhere to look at as well, because again, it's supported for a long time and it's still a solid little mid-ranger. Let me know what you think. Do you think the 9A is a notable upgrade, or is there maybe Google needs to put their foot down a little bit more with the next release? Yeah, let me know in the comment sections below. It's always interesting to hear your thoughts. But thanks for watching. Hopefully this has helped you out, and I will speak to you later.